in the 50s and 60s as a child, my warm and ongoing relationship with the Oak House started. I came here regularly in the school holidays. I would bring a picnic and eat it in the shelter over the side of the house. And then if I was brave enough, I would go and knock on the door of the Oak House and ask to be shown round. And then for the rest of the day, I would sit on the benches by the bowling green and watch the local bowling club in their pristine whites bowl. As the years went by, I became a teacher in the borough, and every year, if possible, I brought my class to visit the Oak House, to take part in the living history that went on here. And as my children came along, I would bring them to visit. And there were two absolutely memorable occasions in the early 2000s. When we visited here, there was a Civil War reenactment in the grounds, and the children were allowed to hold the weapons, shown how the armies would use them, how they would advance. And then about 5 years ago, here we had the most wonderful Witchfinder trial. We had a gentleman who came as the Witchfinder General, and he had a perfect reconstruction of a trial in the house. And I have to say, it was a most chilling occasion. And I think all of us who were privileged to watch this got a real flavour of how terrifying it must have been during the 1600s and early 1700s, of what these people faced when they were accused of witchcraft. Now, fortunately, I am retired, still living in the borough, and could not wait to join the volunteer group in this fabulous house. I'm currently a volunteer gardener and general jack of all trades, whatever is asked of me. And I sincerely hope that in the coming years, the work that the people do here will enable the people who live in West Bromwich to see what a beautiful jewel in the crown they have here, how privileged we all are to have this remaining house from our past. And I hope that as people come to know the house, visit the house, will come to love it as much as I do.
I did hear something from a friend of mine the one time. She and her family went down there and they'd taken a photo or something. I never saw the photo, unfortunately, but she'd given it to the Oak House and they'd kept it and never returned it to her. Well, it was supposedly captured a ghost there, I don't know if it's a lady or something like that. Well, nothing else since, so... But so I went down there and I couldn't feel anything, see anything or whatever. I mean, you get the normal creaks and groans and whatever from old houses. But to me, that's just floorboards settling, so that's it. The house welcomed me. It was happy for me to be there, so there we go. Spooks like me.
My dad was a lecturer at West Bromwich College, and he was a lecturer there around about 60 odd years ago. And every lunchtime, a group of them used to always come down to the Oak House, and there was a big bowling green, and it used to be the pride and joy of the area, and everybody used to clamour to try and play bowls there. It had got lovely walls, and it had got a walkway around, and it had got a little shed where you actually paid your money, and it actually in those days was an honesty box, and they put the money in the honesty box, and then they got their bowls and they were able to play at dinner time, and that was their lunch break. They'd sit on the benches round the bowling green watching and eating their sandwiches, and then they'd go back and they'd teach for the afternoon. And it went on for years until, unfortunately, it became rack and ruin and the bowling green was no longer. So they were lovely days. And in those days, the gardens were beautiful and people used to come and they used to use it like a mini park, because there was no green spaces in the area with flowers, and there was lovely rose beds, and people used to meander on a Sunday afternoon and they'd just sit and take in the sun, and it was a really popular place.
I'm sure some of you will remember years ago when the Jensen motor car was first launched in West Bromwich, and because they wanted a quality product launched, they chose the Oak House from which to launch the selling of Jensen motors. And I actually am lucky enough to have at home a photograph of the Jensen models lined up outside the Oak House here, and I do believe it was used as in their brochures all over the world to sell their Jensen motor cars. So privileged again that the house is used, and privileged to have had Jensen here, of course.
And we used to go bowling there on a Sunday morning. You see his brothers, and we used to go bowling there. And the Oak House really has been, you know, part of my life, because I've known it since I've been, well, little, you know, but I never went there till I was 10 when I went with the school. So, you know, the Oak House is associated really with West Bromwich, like the Albion is, you know, so, you know, that's how I look at the Oak House, you know, it's West Bromwich, and it's been West Bromwich for years and years and years, you know, and of course I used to live in Sandwell Road, opposite Crownall Schools, and you know, it was the nearest thing for us, the Oak House. But I say I know people who live in West Bromwich and they've never been to the Oak House. You know, you associate West Bromwich with the Oak House and the Albion. But I say the bowling green used to be nice. Used to be a lovely bowling green. And you could hire the bowls. I'm going back to the 60s. You could hire the bowls for £1 a time. And you used to be able to get the bowls and bowl on the bowling green. This was the 60s. In the 60s, when I was courting my husband, who's sadly passed away now, but I remember that. We used to meet his brothers on a Sunday. His brothers lived in Albury, and they used to come up, and we used to meet him on a Sunday morning. They used to play bowls. Then we used to go to the Swan, what used to be the Swan, on the top of Brompton Lane, for a couple of drinks, you know. So, but I remember that. And I remember the caretaker used to live over the road. He used to be the groundsman in the gardens. He lived over the road. I think his name was Joe or John. I'm not sure, but my husband knew him, and you know, we used to talk to him, and he used to be able to hire the bowls for £1, and then play the bowls, and then, I mean, I'm going back to the 60s before the decimal. It's a shilling, it's 5 pence now, you know. But that's how I remember Oak House.
There was this table in the middle of the kitchen, set out with all the plates and whatever. Then you got the cooking area, grey stone walls and whatever. Nice and cool, I remember it as being. But I could just imagine the heat of the cooking warming up the kitchen and the food being cooked. The smell of it. Hog's roast.
I like it to be remembered to how it was when the Civil War, you know, it was a part of the Civil War, and the tunnel. So I hope people remember it like that. That's how I remember it. You know, that's how I like to remember it. That it was built in 1600, something like that. And I'm hoping people can cherish it, and you know, it's still there, it's still standing after 400 years. So I'm hoping people, when that, you know, in generations to come, still cherish the memory.
I think I'd like the Oak House for the years to come to be remembered as a place that was a special place in West Bromwich, and something that West Bromwich could be proud of. There's not a lot in West Bromwich that we have got as history, and the Oak House is one place where it is very prominent, and it is something that we all can take pride in. And I think that people need the pride, and they need the pride to come back to the area. And I think it's important that people become involved and make sure that the history of the town is really there for years to come. And I think if we can get as many volunteers as we can to come and help that, then that's all for the better for the future.
Our ancestors, well, some of the borough's ancestors came from there. People in the borough worked there years ago. And it's continuing to give to the people of Sandwell by showing what the place used to be like, dressing up and showing things and whatever, and activities for children and days and whatever. So long may it rain.